All right. I think we will go ahead and get started. And if anyone joins, I can try to fill them in as we go. So thank you all for joining us today. I'm Kelsey Gerber. I'm an Associate Director at Service Year Alliance. We're so excited to have you join our Higher Education as a Backbone organization session. Before we get started, and I'm going to reiterate some of the guidance around how to use the hop-in features during these breakout sessions. First, I want to mention that, as I said before, for anyone who just joined, we're hoping this is going to be an interactive session, so you should feel free to share your comments, experiences, or ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A. If you extend the menu on the right-hand side, using the arrow at the top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see that there are two options for chat when you're in a session. There's the event chat, which is used for the event at large, and then there's the session chat, which is for folks within the session to communicate with one another. So if you have comments, you can feel free to put them in the session box. If you have specific questions, you can either leave them in the Q&A, and I will keep track of that, or since we're not expecting this to be a huge group, we invite you to turn on your video and audio and treat this more like a conversation than a panel. You can request, there should be an ask to turn on video button, something like that at the top of the black box. If you would like to request turning on your video and audio, I think we can have a max of about 10 people with their audio and video on. So we'll just keep that in mind as we go. Just if you do that, just keep yourself muted unless you're talking so that we can reduce any background noise. I've pinned these instructions to the top of the chat as well. So feel free to reference that if you have any questions. You can put them in the chat about how the technology is going to work, and I can help you troubleshoot if need be. So I am thrilled to be joined today by our awesome panelists, and I will pass it over to you, Drs. Breyer and Dr. Flint, so you can share a little bit about yourselves and introduce yourselves. So let's go to Jared first.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kelsey, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jared Plant, and I proudly serve at the University of Central Florida in the Center for Community Schools as the Special Projects Coordinator. So I'm kind of a utility player of sorts, like on a baseball team. So I do a lot of things around community engagement, strategic partnership, and things like that. And definitely appreciate you all being with us this afternoon to hear us around national service when it comes to higher education. So really appreciate you all being here. Tom, I'll pass it to you.
Great. Hello, everybody. And I'm going to stay off video today, if that's okay. I've got 21-month-olds ambling around me here. So apologies in advance if somebody says something or asks a question of me and I don't respond. It's because I've got a captive audience elsewhere here right now. So my name is Tom Breyer, professor in the School of Public Administration at the University of Central Florida. I've been at UCF for 14 years and have worked on a number of different national service projects, hosting an AmeriCorps Vista project, and that's my son in the background, if you can hear him. And recently completed a planning. He has something to tell you too. He's a future public AmeriCorps member. I'm certain of it.
Yes.
But as we'll talk about, I recently completed a planning grant to develop an AmeriCorps program for Central Florida, and I look forward to talking with you about those, the effort there, the ambition there, as well as the challenges that we encountered that we might be able to put our heads around to address how we can better strengthen the ties between the national service community and higher education institutions. And I'm going to put my email address into the chat box just in case I do get interrupted. If anybody who has follow-up questions, you can feel free to reach out to me after this, and I'm happy to set up another time. Thanks.
Thank you both, and it's exciting to see intergenerational service in the works here. So if we're ready to get started. So Jared, maybe I'll pass this first one to you, and Dr. Breyer, you can answer if you have anything to add. Can you talk a little bit about the Central Florida Service Collective and what it does?
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. So the Central Florida Service Collective is really an opportunity to connect national service into higher education. And, using higher education as kind of that vehicle, it really, I think, lends itself well because of the fact that the missions for any national service program or partnering organization and what higher education does, I think just sits and fits so well with that. And we wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity to connect in all those different programs that are either localized to the Central Florida community and or at least serve in the Central Florida community, because we have a lot of different national service programs that are based elsewhere, within, perhaps a regional or a national forum, but they also come down and actually serve within our Central Florida community, and we wanted to make sure to include them as well. But really, it's an opportunity to identify a need and understand, what national service is, especially for our students and our faculty, and working on some of that access and opportunity for people to connect in when it comes to national service, whether it's through research, like Dr. Breyer just mentioned, or for students who then may want to become national service members as well. So that's kind of the purpose behind it, and I'll go into the history in a little bit as well.
Great, yeah. So maybe now is a good time if you can talk a little bit about the origin of the Service Collective, how it came to be, and a little bit more about how it's structured.
Yeah, sure thing. So it was really kind of around this, what's the why, right? Creating the why around this. And really, when I was at the time working in the UCF Center for Community Partnerships within our College of Health and Public Affairs at the time, it was an opportunity to understand, what kind of programs are happening in and around UCF, in and around the greater Orlando area. And I'm an AmeriCorps NCCC alum, National Civilian Community Corps alum. And we actually moved here from Massachusetts, and because my wife ended up starting City Year, which is another AmeriCorps program, City Year Orlando. And so I already knew of multiple programs that were here based locally, but I didn't know necessarily what that looked like. And I had a colleague who we've done some projects together around service learning and published some different documents together. And, she said, hey, would you mind coming to present at our event for our TRIO students who are going to be graduating? And I was really excited about that because she wanted me to present on national service. But then I realized that there was when I went to go look at the outreach and recruitment materials, that there was no one place to actually obtain all of those documents in one place. And so I had to get them from lots of different areas. And I was able to do that, but I noticed that there was no systematic way of that. And then I did some deeper digging and realized through research, and this is really kind of the crux of it too, that there's this thing called the First Destination Survey that UCF students take, whether they're undergrad or graduate students. And what it is really understanding where is your first destination, what's your first step once you graduate from the University of Central Florida. And over 5 years, we looked at 2 different answers that we thought would be really prime for national service opportunities. And that was volunteering or taking time off. And some people have heard of a gap year, and that's kind of what that was. And so just to kind of throw out a few stats for you, on average, there were around 650 students, or 8.3% of the student population that were surveyed over those 5 years, that indicated that they were either taking time off or volunteering, which really makes them prime candidates for national service opportunities. And the number of students that took that survey was almost 13,000 students on average. So it's a pretty big sample size to look at. And so it just got us thinking a little bit more and more deeply as to how we might be able to make something and create something that would allow for these national service programs to have a seat at the table at a higher ed institution, because of that outreach and that recruitment. That's really, really where it kind of stemmed from. At the same time, our dean in now the College of Community Innovation and Education, where Dr. Breyer and I both reside under, the dean actually sits on City of Orlando's board. So we also had a champion of national service as well. So it was just a really prime opportunity, from a timing standpoint and educational standpoint and a partnership standpoint to create this service collective. And so in 2018, May of 2018 is when we kind of started having our first meeting, and it was determined, who should be at the table, which were all those organizations that do service learning as well, national service, and then also partnering organizations like Volunteer Florida, which is our state commission for volunteerism and national service, and AmeriCorps, or the Corporation for National Community Service, and of course Service Year Alliance with the advocacy piece. So we wanted to make sure that all of those individuals had a seat at the table so that we could strategically work on some of the challenges that we were all facing, no matter what focus area that we were in, whether it was unmet human needs, education, environment, food insecurity. We wanted to make sure that that everybody had a voice at the table, and we could work on initiatives that would be able to advance, that voice of national service in that space. So that's a little bit of the structure. And since then, we've been meeting monthly to talk about the things that we can kind of help uplift with the community. And of course, what I tell everybody is that the real work happens in between those meetings, right? And we have our first one to kick off the year tomorrow. But really, it's the work that's done and the collaboration that's done in between those meetings that really makes this really successful.
That's awesome. And I've been lucky enough to join some of those meetings, and it's always super impressive to see how much you guys accomplish, especially in between meetings, hearing about the updates that you all bring to the table once a month. So can you talk a little bit about who leads the day-to-day work, and what the work kind of looks like, and how you kind of staff the initiative?
Yeah, so it's more of, I would say like a committee, right? So we're all the individuals that are part of the group really are either program managers or directors. They might be recruitment managers or directors. They could be COOs of their respective organization. Coordinators, it doesn't matter, the level doesn't matter, but they come from all different facets within those individual organizations. As of now, I'm the one that kind of helps to lead a lot of the initiative just because of the connections that I've had to the work and the individuals, and not just the work within UCF, but also because of my connections to other national service organizations. One for being alum, my wife, starting City of Orlando, and then other organizations that are, in and around the Orlando community, and just kind of taking that time to develop those relationships over time, so that we're all benefiting from each other and finding ways to collaborate and, in the betterment of the community. So in terms of day-to-day operations, it's I think we all kind of share in that, even if I'm the one that's kind of spearheading some of the, like setting the agenda and, leading the actual meetings. I always invite, those organizations to reach out to each other as a way of collaborating and creating that impact, and then letting us know what's going on so that we can, spark other ideas and find ways of, kind of connecting into what is happening, what are some of the trends that are taking place in and around the area. And then, of course, having those impact community meetings that happen monthly too, I think are really crucially important for us to kind of understand not just what's happening here in Central Florida or even across like our small little region here, but also what's going on nationally. And so I'll give you an example. We realized that there was one major issue that's happening probably across the country, but definitely in Central Florida, as we're seeing the shift with COVID and whatnot, that there are a lot of people moving into the Central Florida community for various reasons. And the prices of rent have gone up. Well, if prices of rent in an economy that is very service oriented, meaning a lot of people from Disney, a lot of people working at Universal and some of these other resorts and restaurants and things like that, that are not very high paying. Well, those who want to do a service year are in a very similar boat. And so what we ended up doing was collaborating with one of our programs, National Health Corps up in Jacksonville, and they presented on what's called just kind of like their welcome packet. And within that welcome packet was stuff around housing. And we're like, wow, we really need to do something like that here in Central Florida. And so we created like a subcommittee, a housing subcommittee, where Nancy, who works in the city of Orlando with Orlando Cares with her AmeriCorps Vista program, she knew that she could get some seats at the table that would be able to help in that space. And so we've had a great success having different nonprofit organizations and initiatives kind of meet at that housing subcommittee. And part of that too was learning from the impact communities and what they have done. I think it was Philadelphia who has done something similar, and they provided some insight as to a survey that they did. And so we were able to kind of take and massage that survey to meet the needs of our Central Florida community, and then send that out to a bunch of AmeriCorps members and alumni who then took the survey, and we're in the midst right now of kind of understanding, unpacking what the data is showing so that we can then help try to meet the needs of those prospective AmeriCorps members that are going to be taking hopefully taking arms and being able to serve in the Central Florida community, because we really want to make sure that we're also avoiding some of that brain drain, right? And the opportunity, not only that, we want to keep them here and then have them use their education award to either, do a 2+1+2 and have them go to, Valencia and then maybe do a gap year, service year, and then go back to UCF or some kind of comparison like that, and keep them here and actually be a part of our community in the long term. So that's like one example that I could probably provide, connecting it back to impact communities.
Yeah, that's a really great example, and I think that's a powerful twofold example of for those of you in the session who are kind of new to this based work, of how you can work across programs to really lower the increase impact, and also lower the capacity burden that each organization kind of has to put into things. And then I think on the other hand, like the ability to tap into this broader network and work with people who have done similar things, so that you didn't have to go ahead and develop a survey all on your own. That's helpful, but also being able to like learn from the data that this original survey collected. As someone who has like a data mindset, which I really admire, having read so many of your papers now, I think that's really valuable, being able to learn from some of the work and the outcomes of the work of other people and adapt it to what you all are doing. So I think that's a really powerful example. And as a reminder for anyone on the call who wants to ask a question, you can do so in the Q&A or in the top orange box at the top of the bigger black box. You can request to join with audio and video. You're welcome to join and ask your question out loud too, and feel free to do that at any time. So another question for you, Jared. What do you think are some of the key pieces that are needed to make housing an impact community in a higher education institution successful in the long term? And do you see any major barriers or pitfalls that others thinking about this approach might want to anticipate?
Yeah, so in terms of housing, since we touched upon that, I think what's been really helpful is getting, having the service collective start, and then for those who feel, what my heartstrings are pulling towards this other subtopic, right? Like, so we have someone from City Year, for example, as part of the housing subcommittee to talk about that. And why is that? Because those AmeriCorps members, they're completely on their own when it comes to paying for paying their own way, right? So they might receive a higher living stipend compared to, like myself, when I did AmeriCorps NCCC, because National Civilian Community Corps, everything is paid for, right? It's basically like a state agent or a national agency, federal agency, to be able to just do the direct service. But as a City AmeriCorps member, or an AmeriCorps Vista member or Public Ally, they're the ones that are going to have to pay their way when it comes to rent, when it comes to food, when it comes to transportation. All of those things are taken care of in some of these other programs. And so for that person to kind of sit on the housing subcommittee was great, because they're kind of coming at it through the lens of a City AmeriCorps member, and then having someone from Public Allies sitting on that and looking at it through the Public Allies lens, right? Because maybe they're receiving different living stipends, and maybe they're coming at it from different areas. Maybe their service area is different, right? So keeping in mind all of those, and capturing all of the things that are really important through the lens of their AmeriCorps members and their respective organizations, but seeing that it's the same issue across different programs. It doesn't matter the program that you're serving, housing is still an issue. And so addressing that and doing that together is really important. So, working on developing our own kind of welcome packet, if you will, around housing and trying to provide resources. It's not going to be just for one, and which is the ultimate goal. It's not going to be for just one program. It's going to be for all AmeriCorps programs that are serving here, right? Which is great, and that's exactly what we want. And I should say too that we also have Peace Corps as part of our group, right? As part of the service collective. And just to kind of throw like an impact story on there, because it relates back to housing, is that Peace Corps and their Peace Corps recruiter has been a part of UCF's campus for a number of years. And one of the things, like I mentioned before, in terms of starting this service collective, one of the things that we really were focusing on was outreach and recruitment. And some programs have the advantage of having their own recruiter, for their program, but we never had anything like a non-program specific AmeriCorps recruiter, right? So Peace Corps was instrumental in providing, us with, their deliverables, their budget, and their contract that they have between Peace Corps and the University of Central Florida, and let us use that as a template for us to look at and AmeriCorps it in basically Volunteer Florida, who's part of, like I said, part of the service collective as well, took that and created the first ever non-program specific AmeriCorps recruiter on any college or university campus, which was great. And now we have someone that's serving on behalf of all of those AmeriCorps programs, which is fantastic. And that person also serves on that housing subcommittee, because she wants to understand and glean in from, what is happening, across Central Florida. And, when I go out to recruit and do some outreach, how can I kind of sell the program, so to speak, when it comes to, member benefits, housing being one of those things, or something, at least a barrier that we're trying to overcome on behalf of, current and prospective AmeriCorps members. And I want to give a quick shout out too to Naomi, because Naomi's on this call as well. And, we've had such good success with our AmeriCorps recruiter that Volunteer Florida, who again is funding the position of the AmeriCorps recruiter, saw the success that we're having in Central Florida and replicated that specific position in South Florida. And Naomi, who's on here, serves at the University of Miami, again, at a higher institution, and she is the AmeriCorps recruiter. So it's the second one the first one down in South Florida, kind of doing the same type of work and working on creating her own service collective and so on and so forth. So it's been, we're working on things that, we've seen and we can replicate from others, like other impact communities, but then also, working on different initiatives that we know can be replicated elsewhere as well. And that's like one of those examples.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the recruiters are so exciting. Brent, I welcome to the roundtable.
Thank you. Jared, thanks so much for the session. I had a few follow-up questions to what you were just talking about. I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about that financial relationship with Volunteer Florida. How does that, is that like a contract agreement, or is that through one of their grant competitions? How'd that kind of come about? If you could talk about that. And then I'm always interested in learning more about kind of what you all are seeing as far as specific recruitment tactics that have worked. So if you could talk a little bit about what those recruiters are doing that have been shown to kind of be effective, that would be great as well.
Yeah, thank you, Brent. Those are really great questions. So to kind of go to the first question first. So Volunteer Florida, I think that it is a contract. That in fact, I think that we just re-upped because I think it goes September through August. So very similar to some of the grant cycles that occur. But it is a separate pot of money than what a competitive grant cycle would be, even though it's on the same timeline. And it is like a non-student OPS position. I think it's 25 hours a week, non-student OPS. Position, at least at the University of Central Florida, and I would imagine for Naomi it would be kind of the same thing at my University of Miami. But that's kind of how, because of the relationships that we created along the way, again, not just with the programs, but with Volunteer Florida, with CNCS and with Service Year Alliance, it opened up a whole different kind of world for us, where that was probably one of the first impact stories that we were able to create, was the AmeriCorps recruiter, because of that relationships that we built, and having Volunteer Florida have a seat at the table, because they know, just like we know, that it's going to benefit them too, not just from the AmeriCorps alumni and AmeriCorps recruitment and alumni connection, but also from a research standpoint and a perspective, grant perspective at that university. So I know Dr. Bright had to jump off, but one of the things that he was working on, and they were able to receive a planning grant this past year because of COVID, and working on some of the issues in Central Florida because of COVID, and they were working on an implementation grant that would have had at least 56 AmeriCorps members serving in Central Florida. And unfortunately, it didn't work out this year, and hopefully it'll work out in a subsequent year. But when it comes to recruitment, one of the things that what I know our AmeriCorps recruiter is working on, and Naomi, if you want to pipe in too, and some of the things that you're doing, please, I welcome you to do that. But one of those things that we've done is, or what Mika has done really, is a newsletter. So she has a newsletter that goes out every single month, and it really engages those different programs and highlights the different programs and what they're doing, in terms of the specific programming that prospective AmeriCorps members will be doing, the member benefits, the timeline, things like that, and that goes out monthly, which is great. We also have this service matrix that if you click on the link, and I can send you this PowerPoint to Kelsey so she can share it out, but there's a link that you can click on, and as a prospective AmeriCorps or service member, including Peace Corps, that it basically is similar to like a BuzzFeed style quiz, where you can kind of answer a bunch of questions, and through an algorithm will spit out like your top one or two choices in terms of where that program would see you fitting. So it might be like an AmeriCorps NCCC and Peace Corps might be like your top choices. And then it provides the opportunity to learn more by clicking on that hyperlink to learn more about the program. And then you can also set up an appointment with the AmeriCorps recruiter to learn more from them as well. So that's another thing that we've been working on. I always feel that having a program that people can engage with while also being students, I thought would be like a really, really helpful thing. So one of the things that we did this past year during COVID, and really it's going to be needed this year, is bringing on the Jumpstart program. And Jumpstart is where university students are, full-time university students are also AmeriCorps members, Jumpstart AmeriCorps members, and they serve 300 hours over the academic year to serve preschool-age children in the areas of, in academics. So it's the literacy and reading comprehension to get those preschoolers ready for kindergarten. And so we piloted it this past spring, and we're going to be moving into this upcoming year, and that could be at a number of different preschool entities. So it could be like at a Head Start, or one of our community partnership schools has a preschool because it's a pre-K through 8th grade school. So we can work there. VPK is another area. So by that, it provides an opportunity and for those UCF students / AmeriCorps members to actually do service while being in school. They also were working on trying to get federal work study to be a part of that as well. So they're receiving some sort of like stipend, if you will. They also receive an education award at the end. It's, of course, reduced because they're only doing the 300 hours, but they're receiving, I think around $1,200 or $1,300 for that. But really the huge benefit of it is that they can do it multiple years. And our hope is that that becomes a pathway for them to want to then continue and do a full service year, with take your choice of the different AmeriCorps programs that are out there. But that's the hope, is that by participating in service, right? I call it, participatory excellence, is that they have the opportunity to learn by doing, and then want to continue doing and continue learning in that respect. So that program is there. And then finally, one of the things that we really wanted to hone in on is creating this like closed loop system for prospective AmeriCorps members. And this is something, again, having the AmeriCorps recruiter is really helpful with, and that's the AmeriMentoring program. And so AmeriMentoring is, we have kind of a clearinghouse of AmeriCorps alumni who would be willing and able to serve as, mentors, and not just to help someone and answer questions about their program, but, if Brent, if you came up to me and said, hey, I want to learn more about FEMA Corps. Okay, well, let's talk about it. Well, that might be pretty transactional, right? But if we said, okay, I'm going to talk about it, and then I'm going to follow back up with you, and I'm going to be your mentor through this application process. And then we're also going to take advantage of, once you get in, I am going to be your network to start. I'm going to be that person to constantly connect with you throughout your service year, knowing that, again, regardless of the program, there are peaks and valleys when it comes to that service year, and that person becomes your mentor throughout the service year to kind of get you through some of those rough times, right? But then also can celebrate some of the good times with you. And what it does is that it helps with, not only recruitment, but it also helps with retention, and it helps with, AmeriCorps engagement and experience, and then alumni engagement as well. So you're hitting all kinds of pieces there, and you're doing a closed looped system as a way of connecting in, the outreach and recruitment and alumni and prospective service members.
Thanks, Darren. And just with the recruiters and I guess the AmeriMentor positions, are those all focused at just University of Central Florida, or are they also branching out to any other schools in the area?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for like AmeriMentoring, I mean, that's like a template that, I can easily share with anybody that would be, willing and able to use that. And, there are certain programs like a City Year that have a very strong alumni network, and it would work, I think, very well program specific, in addition to like what we're doing in terms of like providing that as a service through our AmeriCorps recruiter. So like I know with Conservation Corps Florida, they want to start implementing that very soon as a way, again, of connecting alumni to prospective AmeriCorps members to retain and to kind of build that network and that trust and so on and so forth. When it comes to the Service Collective or the AmeriCorps recruiter position, you know, like I said, Naomi at the University of Miami, she's working and doing some things there. I know that up at Tufts in the greater Boston area, I think that they were working on some things up there too. Plus all the impact communities, they all have a different kind of way of doing things. But, you know, for us, like we also have, so it's UCF, we have Valencia, and we have Advent Health University as part of our Service Collective currently. We're trying to expand that. We're always looking to find ways of expanding and inviting others to the table strategically that want to be at the table, that want to contribute, and it's a huge benefit. I'll give you another example because you asked that specific question, Brent, and this is going to actually happen tomorrow, so very timely. So a contact of mine knew about the Service Collective, and he's like, you know what, you need to get in contact. I want to put you in contact with the Arias Foundation. And the Arias Foundation is a foundation that's been set up about a year ago. And with Arias Technologies, the for-profit arm, it really, what they do is they're trying to bridge the technology gap and the digital divide, if you will. Especially over this past year, they saw a huge need. So what they do is they take in computers or tablets or laptops from other entities and then refurbish them and then push them back out into the community. We had them present at an early, I think it was in January, if I'm not mistaken, Service Collective meeting. And then one of our Service Collective members from Valencia College, who also sits on the Community Leadership Council at one of our local community partnership schools, brought that to them in terms of this opportunity, this partnership, this idea. And it got all the way up to the principal. The principal said, yes, I want to meet with this person because of COVID. We have a lot of students that are not, they're not getting the education that they need for various reasons. We want to bridge that divide. And so I want to be able to meet with them. And they've met. They're creating this loaner program because if there is technology that breaks, Orange County Public Schools, in our case, they have to, fix that, right? And then send it back out into the school. Well, this kind of, creates that that opportunity to have like a seamless transition for giving that technology and loaning that technology to that student and that family. And they're going to be receiving tomorrow, I believe it's 30 desktops and 20 or 25 laptops to the students. So again, that's all because of the Service Collective and then learning about all these different things that are taking place and then pushing it back out into the community, because that's really what the vision is, of that of the Service Collective, is that incubator of the service year programs and partnering organizations to collaborate and engage and positively impact the community. And so that's like an example that's going to be happening tomorrow.
Awesome.
That's awesome. So we have a couple questions coming in from the Q&A. One I want to get to in particular. How have you gotten support from the university for the collective? What's the pitch? This person would love to work with higher ed, but isn't sure how to sell them on it.
That's a great and loaded question. And it's a difficult one. It's really trying to find those campus champions. And for me, I see the value add the most when you can have both student affairs and academic affairs at the table. So we have, like in the AmeriCorps Recruiter, for example, they sit under student affairs within the Office of Student Involvement through Volunteer UCF and the Alternative Break Program. And their supervisor was one of the letters of commitment that we needed to get to become an impact community. And we got the other one from the mayor of Orlando, Buddy Dyer. So, and on the academic affairs side, I know Dr. Breyer is not here, but he's kind of that other piece in creating this like in-service and institute that he's trying to create. And then eventually, I think that it'll kind of marry together both of those components and have a little bit more of a seamless and cross campus and university community relationships that we'll be able to build. Again, we got lucky because of the new College of Community Innovation and Education, and having that dean sit on a board of one of the service year organizations. That was a key for us. But also like in our Center for Community Schools, knowing that one of our community partnership schools who, in that particular structure, they have a wellness coordinator, and the city of Orlando was able to provide an AmeriCorps Vista member for that wellness coordinator because they were in need of someone and they had to find someone really quickly. And, having the city of Orlando be that intermediary provided a huge relief to that community partnership school in that way. So it's really trying to find those campus champions. And, sometimes you have to like really understand who is doing some of the research or the teaching on the academic affairs side. Especially like, with Dr. Breyer, he's in the School of Public Administration and Nonprofit Management. So having that school and those programs already established, that you're going to have people with like-minded as you that want to kind of work on some of these types of initiatives. It's very low-hanging fruit when it comes to student affairs, because oftentimes student affairs and or a center or an office or an institute of community engagement probably exists at that institution as well. And so tapping into those staff members and student leaders is another really important piece of the puzzle too, because you want to make sure that students are have a seat at the table too. And at UCF, student voice is huge, and they've been able to give us like a pulse of what's going on. In fact, it was the student leaders that created that service matrix BuzzFeed style quiz by two students that had never even heard of AmeriCorps before, and then they created this thing from the ground up because they got to learn and be a part of and be engaged in what we were trying to do. And so through that, those connections and relationships, and then empowering them to bring their ideas to the table, we know it is going to benefit everybody, because you can do research, you can do outreach. It's really good for alumni, and it's very low cost. I mean, nobody is paying anything to any of this except for Volunteer Florida with those two AmeriCorps recruiter positions. Everything else is a group of people, like-minded people that want to help benefit, work together collaboratively to benefit the broader community.
I think that's really helpful advice, particularly thinking about which offices to try to target if you're trying to develop a relationship with higher education institutions. So we have 4 minutes left. Jared, I wanted to give you a chance to give any final thoughts, or let us know what you think the Service Collective is working on next.
Yeah. So let's see. Final thoughts. I would say that please reach out to me. I know Kelsey will have my contact information provided, and I can send to her, a PowerPoint slide deck that has some pieces in there that might be helpful. But working with people like Naomi, and I know she's based out of the Career Services Department. Even though like for us, it's a joint effort between the UCF Center for Community Schools and Volunteer UCF and the Office of Student Involvement. Like it's really trying to find the people that would be those campus champions is the first way to go. And then also doing asset mapping and knowing, okay, what organizations already exist. And that's what we did before then wanting to introduce other organizations or initiatives like Jumpstart, for example, into the mix as you go forward. So I think it's just starting small. But again, if you don't want to reinvent the wheel, I would be more than happy to provide resources that was handed to us too, and then just kind of rework that to make it palatable and strategic for your own institution. And in terms of what we're working on next, what I would love to see is something like this happen through the University of Central Florida is what I would love to see, and having these kinds of conversations at a larger scale, at a national level, take place. And so that's something that I think that we're going to work on, in addition to maybe hosting some courses that students / AmeriCorps members can get involved with.
That's awesome. Well, I hope that all comes to fruition. I look forward to participating in any future convenings hosted out of the University of Central Florida. So with that, we have a minute left. I have a couple of closing notes about the next session you all can head to, but thank you so much, Jared, and thank you, Dr. Breyer, who I know had to jump off, but hopefully he left his email in the chat, so feel free to reach out to Dr. Breyer as well if you have any questions for him. But it was very exciting to talk to you and learn more about your backbone organization and the model you guys use down for the Central Florida Service Collective. So to all the attendees, thank you guys for participating. And again, I encourage you to reach out directly to the panelists via private message and hop in, or you can email partnerships@serviceyear.org if you want us to connect you to anyone who you've encountered or met through any of this.